Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us at today's webinar. We have a fantastic presentation coming up on the joy in inventing games. I'm going to pass straight over to Mr. Teng Sheng to present his presentation. Over to you, Teng.
Thank you so much, Ellen. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to this session on inventing games. Really happy to have this opportunity to share my experience and learning, and together to learn from so many friends from around the world. Thank you so much, Ellen, for publicizing and supporting this session as well. And thank you so much to Naoki as well. I am Teng, a master teacher from PESTA, which stands for PE and Sports Teacher Academy in Singapore. This session is titled Joy in Inventing Games for two reasons. For those of you who may be new to inventing games or game design, I want to share with you how, from a practitioner's lens, how wonderful this approach is in terms of its educational value and in bringing joy into learning. And the second reason, Joy Butler conceptualized inventing games model partly to prevent bullying and to teach democracy and to promote social justice through PE. As she sees an urgent need for us to teach our students beyond just learning to play. So if you know Joy and follow her works, you can clearly see her staunch beliefs and philosophy in the inventing games model. So you can see joy in inventing games. So that's the second reason. So now before we start, just a little bit about myself. I started teaching in 2000, so it's been 22 years in service. I joined PESTA in 2012, and I went on to do my master's in education in 2015 in UBC, Vancouver, Canada. That was where I met Joy. And when I came back, I was appointed master teacher in 2016. And my work revolves around in-service teacher professional development. So I collaborate with schools a lot, and I conduct workshops on PE. My interests other than inventing games includes game-based approach, teacher belief, and also student voice. Now in my area of work, I am fortunate enough to have the opportunities to work alongside and learn from prominent academics in TGfU. The one person who has the greatest impact on me is Dr. Joy Butler. She was my supervisor in UBC when I was studying for my master's, and I am indebted to her. And I thought this is the best way to show my gratitude, to spread her good work in inventing games to more people. And to be very honest with you, when I was first introduced to inventing games, I didn't really fancy it until I tried it during the pandemic when schools were closed. So back then in 2020, I collaborated with teachers to create a series of lessons on inventing target games, and the students loved it. It sparked an interest and passion in inventing games. I have been collaborating with teachers ever since, learning more and more about inventing games and becoming more and more convinced about on the potential. And it is here that I want to share with you what I've learned, and I hope you'll spark an interest in you too. So I have so much to share with you, but I only have 1 hour. So pardon me if I'm not able to address some of the questions that you may have on inventing games. So I have scoped sharing these three main areas using the experience I had implementing inventing games into school. Right, so I'll be sharing with you the process and the focus, and also what our students have learned and some of the points to consider when you implement inventing games. So I want to start by sharing by asking this question. Now, what is the purpose of games education? Now, for me, beyond, I think just like many of you, beyond learning to play the game confidently, I want my students to be literate game players who understand the meaning of rules and see the interconnectedness between tactics, rules, and game structures. I want them to be involved in tasks that require them to think critically and problem solve. I want them to engage in games that are playable and meaningful to them, and games where everyone can contribute regardless of the skill level or prior playing experience. And on top of that, I also want them to learn important life skills and values through the process of learning. So when I reflect on my own teaching, I realized that I fell short. So this prompted me to look for alternative to games teaching. And it is here that I want to share with you my experience. So don't get me wrong, I'm not here to convince you that inventing games is a better way to teach games. So my intent is to share with you the potential, and hopefully it will encourage you and more of you to try some aspects of it. Or if you have already been teaching using game design, I would like to connect with you so that I can learn from you too. So what do students learn in inventing games? They learn about games concepts and strategies for sure. They learn to appreciate the rules and the importance of being inclusive and fair, and that is really important. They learn to communicate their ideas and to listen to their friends, and they learn to think critically and creatively as they design their games. They learn to work with their friends and resolve conflicts and make decisions, and the list go on and on. Now, many of you, like me, grew up playing games we invented. There was a time when we did not have internet, YouTube, Netflix, and so on. So we not only had fun back then, but we also learned valuable skills, life skills, without us even knowing it. So if we agree that the experience has helped us become a better person, why not recreate the experience in our own classroom? Now, our findings provide evidence to support the claims made over 50 years ago by Modern and Redfern that student design games allow students to develop a deeper level of learning about games. The concept is not new. Prof. Len Almond first dabbled with inventing games in his university class in Loughborough in the 80s. And in the 90s and early 2000s, Ines Rovino and Peter Hasty have also written quite a bit on student design games. Now, Dr. Joy Butler, who was a leading advocate of TGfU and devoted a large part of her work in championing social justice and democracy in PE, saw the potential of inventing games and developed a framework to provide structures for teachers who are implementing inventing games. And through inventing games, students learn to become not just a better player, but also a better person. Inventing Games Unit is based largely on her inventing games framework and pedagogical principles, and also a little bit on Peter Hasty's book on student design games. So for those of you who are familiar with Joy's work, this is the 10 stages of student design games, inventing games. So they are recommended, so feel free to adapt and change. For us, because our student, when we tried it in school, were in grade 6, 7. So we didn't go beyond stage 7. If you feel that your students have got the prior experience and they go beyond that, do go ahead. If you can just Google the title of this article and you can find it in the internet itself. It's open access. So what did we do? Before I show you a short clip on what we did in class, so this is a photo of the winning group, proudly showing off their medal, having a photo taking session with their form teachers. And in inventing games, we do have a winner. We got the students to vote for the most creative and fun games, and we present them with prizes and so on, just to have a little bit fun over the experience. So this is a 2.5-minute video about over the 8 lessons that we have done, just to give you a little idea of what the whole inventing game idea is about. Oops. Sorry. Yeah, I realized that there's no sound, but it's okay. I'll send you the slides, and there'll be a QR code. You can watch it. Yeah. Yeah. So sorry about sound. Yeah. So that is in a nutshell what it is all about over the 8 lessons. And so what did we do? Before we start, we have to decide on the end in mind, which is very important. So the focus on impending game. So the focus and the end in mind really depends on a few things. One is, of course, the duration that we have. For us, we had about 10 lessons. So if you have more, then you can do more things, definitely, for sure. And the other deciding factor is the profile of the students. For our students, most of our students don't really invent games during their free time. So we spend a bit of time scaffolding, teaching them how to invent a game. So we have to be realistic on what we can achieve over the 10 lessons. So in inventing games, right, the process of learning is as important as the product. So this is really, really important. The final game, while important, should not dominate the learning. So you cannot, as a teacher, be too wanting the game to be perfect. So it will not be perfect. The richness lies in the process of inventing game, not by how wonderful the end product is. And the 7 points you see here in the slide is our focus, and really having the end in mind is really key, because it will shape the design of the learning experience and how we assess the students' learning in the end. As we will explain later, not all of you or your colleagues may buy into the philosophy of inventing games. It all depends on your belief on the purpose of PE, the role of teachers, and how students learn. But we hope that you will listen to us with an open mind and consider the possibility of implementing in your class. So before I proceed, may I invite you to scan this QR code. It should bring you to a Google folder with the annexes that we have created, and also a sample unit plan. Feel free to adapt to the needs, to your needs, depending on the profile of the student you have and the time. In the unit plan, you will see suggested activities, suggested focus. In the comment part, you can see some of my thought process as well. We didn't follow exactly, we adapted as well. And we didn't use all the annexes there as well. The annexes that are there for you to choose, for you to decide which one you want to use. But those are all important documents because it will guide your students in their discussion. Yeah, so take some time to look through it for a while. So our friends are always asking us how does a inventing game lesson looks like. This is how it looks like when they have started inventing their game. So we will usually spend about 5 minutes at the start to go over the intent of the session, what they have the expectation, the success criteria for this lesson, and at the end, another about 10 to 15 minutes for a discussion, a debrief. So the rest of the 1 hour, it is a 1 hour lesson. So for the rest of the 40 minutes to 45 minutes, the students will be on their own, in their own courts, experimenting, exploring, discussing with their friends. So different groups will be doing different things. So as a teacher, we will walk around because in inventing games, we are the facilitator of the learning. Observing, listening to them, coming in to ask questions, to nudge them a little bit. If some groups need a little bit of help, we will give them a little bit more ideas. but basically they are on their own. They own their own learning. As long as at the end of the day they come up with a game, that's good enough. So routines are really important for embedding games. So we also took our time to create a community, and that's really important. Do not jump straight into embedding game itself. Take some time to create the environment. So for us, we use Padlet. It is a free software. Many of you would be familiar with it, because we want the conversation to continue virtually outside the classroom as well. We also use the Padlet for them to upload their first version, second version, and third version of the game, and also the annexes that they discuss as a group. Because in the lesson itself, it will not be possible for the teacher to go around to give feedback to everyone. So this gives us an opportunity for us to look at all the group's work and for us to give feedback to them as well. At a certain juncture of the lesson, a certain point of the game, of the unit itself, we also invite their parents to contribute to their learning. So those in boxes you can see are the parents giving their feedback and also encouragement. So as a parent to a little girl myself, I would very much want to know what my kid is doing in class. So having this opportunity allows us to partner the parents to ensure the learning is rich and meaningful for the kids. So, and the volume of feedback really increases when we had the feedback, when we had the Padlet, because students are giving ideas and commenting on each other's game virtually on the Padlet, and they will reply, and the link continues, after the lesson itself. But of course, we have to teach them how to give feedback and how to receive feedback itself. But we like the learning virtually because by having that just 1 hour in lesson is not enough. So you need to be creative in finding space and time for them to continue to talk about it. We also created a Padlet we call it the kindness wall, right? Because it allows them to express their gratitude to their friends throughout. And that is one of the focus, if you remember, for our embedding games unit. So throughout the unit, we told them that we all possess this superpower to make, we are able to make people happy and feel good and to make the world a better place. And that is being kind to one another. So throughout the unit, we encourage them to go into the Padlet to show their gratitude to their teammates who have been supporting them, who have taught them something, for example. And these are some of the examples which they have posted on the wall. So borrowing ideas from sport education, we also allow them to create an identity and to assign the roles. So in each group, we have about 5. And they are empowered to elect their team leader, their team captain, equipment manager, technology specialist, and team secretary. They all each have a role to play in the embedding games unit. This activity was also done at the beginning to start them working together, talk to one another, and create a common identity, because everyone plays a part. And they actually took it quite seriously. So other than creating identity, you also have to build a team at the start, right? We also gave out prizes to award, the one with the best design logo and the team that come up with the most meaningful team name and so on, just to add a bit of fun. So creating an environment is critical, as we mentioned earlier on, right? It has to be a fun, and one that is conducive, safe for learning as well. So take time to prepare the ground. I say it again, yeah. So other than the embedding game itself, we motivate them along the way, giving out small prizes, like I mentioned earlier on, prizes for the best design, team logo, for example, for students who give us the best reflection, for example. We also added music, played music throughout the 10 lessons. We allow them to create their own playlist to lighten the mood. Teams were also given a lot of autonomy to chart their own learning, solve their own problem, and create a game that they like. So we also constantly seek their feedback on lesson design to co-construct the learning experience, because our message to them is that they too are our teachers, and we need to work together to make this meaningful and fun experience. So now this is the most challenging part of the embedding games unit, because we need to scaffold their learning. As I mentioned earlier on, I'm not too sure about the kids in our school. For the kids in our school, they don't really have the opportunity to design and play their own games, as I mentioned earlier on. And they don't play a lot of games other than those in school. They hardly play a lot of games outside. So we have to take time to scaffold their learning, to allow them to understand the primary rules of net barrier game, because this unit is a net barrier game. Because without knowing what makes a net barrier game, when they start to design, you will see them designing target games instead of net barrier games. So this takes time. We also took some time to allow them to appreciate the importance of rules, because the rules dictate the game. So if you refer back to the unit plan, we took about 5 lessons to do that. So some of you may only take about 3 lessons. So it really depends on the profile of the kids. We also need time to scaffold and to teach them what is considered a fun game, right? So we teach them the principles of fun, fair, that a game needs to have flow. It can't be breaking down all the time when you play. It needs to be inclusive for everyone. It needs to be safe and, of course, challenging as well. And most importantly, is it has to be also be unique, right? Because it can't be a game that everyone is familiar with. So you realize that at the start, many of them do not know how to, when you say, okay, everyone go and design a game, it is very common to have them looking around and copy their friend's idea, because, or some of them will design games that look very similar to what to those games that they are already playing, like badminton, like tennis, for example. They don't have the idea. So we have to teach them how to modify a game. Say, for example, adjust the height of the net, explore different ways of sending and receiving, not just using rackets. You can use a hand, not just to throw, but to strike. You can also use the foot. The type of balls to use, whether to use a bounce or not a bounce, for example. So that they have the ideas on which variables to change in order to design a game that is unique and different from the rest. So we give them lots and lots of time and lots of equipment for them to explore and experiment as well. So for teachers, we walk around to facilitate by asking the right question. Sometimes we have to give them some ideas just to spark off that thinking, but we will not tell them what to do all the time, because we want to give them the ownership, to design a game that is uniquely theirs. So next is at the start, before we allow them to invent a game, they have to create good rules. Time is set aside for that. You saw some of the kids with the teacher sitting around talking about this. So this is where the annex will come in play. It is not necessary to use all, really, because we need time for the practical part, the embedding part. So because they are going to work together for 10 lessons, right? They need to decide on the group process. For example, how do we make decisions? What the rules for engagement, right? How do we want to communicate with one another? How they want to work together as a team. So each team will have a folder, and they will keep the physical form, right? And when there is a conflict, the teacher will, when the teacher is with the team, the teacher will usually ask them to take out the relevant annexes from the folder, and will refer to it. So when they quarrel because they can't decide on the decision, we go back to the decision-making rules that they set earlier on. So this is what you mentioned early on as a group. So have you done this, right? So then that is when they will have the opportunity to discuss why didn't they follow the rules, why did they follow the rules, what could they have done better, and so on and so on. So the teacher's role is very, very critical, not only to draw their attention to successes and challenges, but also to support the students as they develop fair and effective ways of working. So we help them to identify unfairness and imbalance of power within the group, because sometimes the more vocal one may dominate, right? So we also want to limit privilege and help students to find positive ways to be rewarded for their efforts. So through the conversation, we help them understand that everyone has equal power to vote and to speak. And with this right comes also the responsibility to exercise those rights through active interest and involvement in the group. And if they choose not to use their voice to speak, then they have no right to say that the game is not a good game because they didn't exercise the right. Yeah, so they understand from authentic learning experience the importance of the rights that they have, for example. So you have this the group leader taking charge with the secretary writing down the discussion, and so it usually in inventing games you need lessons, the leader will take over, and sometimes you'll gather the leader to brief them on the expectation and what they have to do so that they'll take charge of their own group. The other one is about intentionality of design, which is the key highlight of inventing games, because we want the learning to happen by design and not by chance. So deliberateness and intentionality is key. And we use the principles of representation and exaggeration as well. For example, creating moments of aporia. Aporia in Joy's Playing Fair book means when moment where they got stuck, where they can't proceed because they cannot agree, for example. So this is one example that we created. So we gave them only about 15 minutes. We gave them, all the groups, these items, and we told them in 15 minutes, you have to create a game. Not necessarily a net barrier game, but a game. And you have to record it, explain it, and upload on the tablet. So with the limited time that they have, we exaggerate the situation where there will be issues where communication will break down, where there will be argument. So that is when we will take the opportunity to step in and to address the importance of, say, being inclusive, when you are offering your opinions, for example. For example, if you want them to we want them to understand the importance of rules in certain games, then we will allow them to play a game, an imperfect game, a game that breaks down, for example, right? Or one that favors one team, if we don't talk about inclusivity or fairness, for example. So the intended learning always happens by design, as mentioned here. So deliberateness is key. So the learning design will take some time for you to, it is important for you to consider the outcome and for you to design in such a way that the learning will happen. So in order for them to see the relevance of their learning and allow them to transfer what they have learned to their everyday lives, so one of the key learning of inventing game is to extend their learning beyond the classroom. So many ways we can do it. One of the ways is the use of exit slip. So the final 15 minutes, right, that we mentioned to you in the class, we got them to sit down and we got them to write about how, say, for example, relate an incident where communication breakdown, with your friends or with your parents. So what led to the breakdown, and got them to commit to something that they will do to be a better communicator, for example. So through this, it also gives us an opportunity to get to know our students a bit better, because they will relate things that happened to them, say, in the past and so on. Now, there's a term used by neuroscientists, they call it "we feel, therefore we learn." And by evoking their emotions when they relate back, to incidents that happened in the past, that part of the brain responsible for learning sees an increase in activity, with new connections being established. So learning is thus richer and retention is higher as well. So in this, for example, you see the kid mentioned about the communication breakdown with the mom, if I'm not wrong, and he analyzed and realized that what could have been done better and what he will do better next time. And this student relate back to when she was 5-year-old and how someone was kind to her and how she felt. And for this, we got them to make a commitment to be kind to someone, in the next few days, right? And when they come back again, then we will get them to share So what kind deeds have they done? And whether they have done what they have committed to do. So if you refer to the unit plan, every lesson will have a focus on a 21 Century competency or a value. We are making full use of the opportunities presented in their process of embedding games to allow students to experience and learn them in an authentic setting. So it gave us a perfect opportunity to step in to address the situation, because the learning is real and they learn it better because they can see the relevance. The learning of 21CC, they are not an afterthought, right? They are deliberate, they are planned, so just that they are just as important as the psychomotor and the cognitive objective in many games. And one of the key skills is to learn to work as a team, right? Students, just like adults, most of them are conflict avoidance, right? So in inventing games, there are many opportunities where they will disagree or where they don't like each other's idea. So they will learn to resolve conflict. They learn to step up, to use their voice. They learn to contribute in their own ways to communicate and to be heard. So they learn to work with students they are not comfortable with as well. So if we agree that this is important, then we have to make sure that students have the opportunity to collaborate and for us to facilitate this learning. So how do we teachers know that they have learned? So it is through the use of assessment approaches to collect the evidences ranging from self-assessment, peer assessment to teacher assessment, right? For example, exit slip, we also get them to self-evaluate how they have performed in terms of as an effective communicator. From the videos that they uploaded, we know whether they have understood the primary rules of net barrier games, for example. We got them to evaluate their peer, how much of a team player their peer is, why, and so on. So it is really through these varied assessment approaches to allow us to know whether we are on the right track and whether the students are on the right track. So what did the students learn? So these are just some examples that we pull up from the assignment that they have done, and some of them are from the post unit, a survey that we've done with them. So from this, the students mentioned that he understood that everyone can contribute in their own little way. They do not have to be the best player in the team to be able to contribute. So these students reflected about being an effective communicator. So she reflected that she has not been effective in communicating, but over the weeks, she's able to learn how to articulate her thoughts to her teammates. So many of them mentioned about communication. They are able to communicate better. They are able to, they learn how to be kind to one another. They learn how not to use, they learn how important it is to not use disrespectful words when you are angry, because it will not help in communicating your ideas. They also learn when to listen, when to stop talking, when to stop talking when they are angry, for example. When everyone is angry, to calm everyone down, respect everyone. Of course, they mentioned about games, structures, about rules and so on, but we're just picking up those 21CC that they reflected, they had to pick up over the unit. So inventing game class is a place of lively debate. So as in real life, communication will fail. So tempers will fray and differences will happen. So through these experiences, they will learn that not all situations can be resolved. This is very important. And sometimes that they have to settle for a compromise or a delay in this final decision until they see how things turn out. So they learn that being angry, using disrespectful words and insisting their way will not resolve the problem. I think that is the biggest takeaway. One of the biggest takeaway for the students. So what did we learn? Many things. These are just 4 of them. We learned that it is so important as a teacher inventing games to ask the right question and to know when to intervene, because as teachers, when we see an argument happening, the first thing in our mind is to step in to resolve it, right? But we want to empower them, to resolve the conflict themselves. So as a teacher, we need to, tell ourselves to hold back. We need to listen and we need to observe, because we also do not want the argument to explode, right? So at the right moment, we will have to go in and to calm everyone down, for example, and ask questions, and not to tell them what they have done wrong, to ask questions. So that is a skill that we feel that is so important, because if we are not used to it, we tend to go in and we'll be telling them, right? So to holding back is something that we always to remind ourselves. The physicality of PE is very important. Students look forward to PE and they want to come. They come to PE hoping to move, to explore, to play different equipment, to learn through movement. While it is also very important for time to be set aside for them to discuss, we want to ensure that they also move. So over the two different schools that we have been to, right? We reduce the number of annexes that we use as well, because we want to afford more time for the students to experiment. Right? So that is something that we have learned. Scaffolding their learning is key. In the first school that we went to, we didn't scaffold enough. Halfway through the inventing games, we realized that they are not inventing; they are just looking at each other. They are just duplicating the game that they have played before. So we got them to come back again. So in a way, it wasted a bit of time. So in the second school that we went to, having this knowledge, we started off with a few more lessons to scaffold their learning, to ensure that they know how to design a game and they know what is a good game. Take time to manage conflict. We always have to remember ourselves, the process is important. Not so much of the product, but the process. So when they have a conflict, do not hurry them to solve it and move on. So because they don't have time to record their final game, for example, right? So we have to take our time to really to find out what went wrong, what causes the conflict, what was said, what should they have done, right? So something that we have to remind ourselves. So what's next? We have started actually moving on to inventing invitation games, which I will share in the next available platform. I have also a unique plan for target games during remote learning. We designed that. So if you're interested, later with my email here, you can write to me, I can send it to you. We are also trying out shorter inventing games experiences, not over 10 lessons, say over 2 to 3 lessons for younger students, 7, 8-year-olds. And our intent is to present at the TGfU conference in 2024 in Auckland, if that happens. And for you, to any one of you to connect with me to bounce ideas, and if you have done game design as well, I'm looking forward to learning from you as well. So do write to me, and I hope to connect with you. So last few slides. So earlier I mentioned that inventing games may not be for everyone. So Joy wrote in her book, Playing Fair, excellent book. You should go and get it if you have not read it. So she wrote that inventing games is best suited for teachers with an ecological worldview. So someone who values the development of a whole child. So some of you may not agree with the focus on inventing games, and that is perfectly fine. We are not saying that inventing game is better. It just provides an alternative to games education. So we have tried it and have seen its potential in increasing motivation and engagement level. And we want to share our experience with you as well. And I hope you'll try it and fall in love with inventing games as well. I will show this to you later on. And to wrap up the presentation, I shall leave you with this question to ponder. So it's an important question that we need to review once in a while, because our answer to this question will shape what we teach and how we teach our students. And going back to this, Joy wrote in the book about inventing games, really it's not just a fun experiment, really it is part of an integrated, considered physical education curriculum as well. So before I end, maybe I just stop share for a while and just play you the video, because I really want to show you what is one of the game that they have designed. Hold on a second, because I didn't share the sound earlier on. Yeah. Here. Okay. Hope you can hear the sound as well.
Hello everybody, Today I will be explaining how our game works and how we play it. Our game is called Bounce Ball. It is a simple game. We have a volleyball and a net. Before we hit the ball over the net or below the net, the ball will have to hit the ground once. You have to throw it down and bounce it over or below. When you bounce the ball over the net, all you have to do is hit the ball and hit the ground once and you will get 1 point. If you hit the ball below the net, you have to hit the ground a minimum of 2 times before you get 2 points. As you can see, if I hit the ball below the net, it's hit the ground twice. If she catches it with 1 bounce, I don't get a point. That's 2 points.
Okay. So again, when we look at the games that the students are sharing, we have to understand that the game was designed using their own lens. Sometimes from a teacher's point, it's like, it's not fun at all, it's not unique at all, but to the students, it is fun, it is unique. So again, we have to hold back, because this is their game, it's not my game. So we have to try to see the game through their lens and not just through our lens. Yeah. So that's all I have. Question time. Ellen, back to you.
Thank you for that, Teng. Absolutely fantastic presentation on the Inventing Games model, and an excellent sort of shout out to Joy Butler there, so thank you. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Please do start speaking or bob it in the chat. Anyone got anything they want to ask? Oh, Farihan's got, have you ever worked in rural areas with this?
I'm not too sure what you mean by rural area, because Singapore is a very small country. We don't really have a rural area here. Yeah, it's a city. It's a city. That's all. Yeah.
Matthew, could we please have your email address again and Twitter handles to see further professional practice and discussion? Matthew, yeah, I will add all the slides on, but Teng, do you want to add it to the chat for us?
Sure, I am adding to the chat. Thank you so much.
The slides and the recording will be available on our website at the webinars link that I've put earlier, so that you can rewatch it and look at those QR codes that were popped up as well. So another question from Kanai. When you're teaching this approach, what's the most challenging parts?
It is the mindset shift, I must say, and because when I present it in conferences, the first question will be, or the first comment will be, I don't have time to fit this into the syllabus, because there is no inventing game in the syllabus itself. And our syllabus in Singapore is quite tight. They do not really have extra time to do this. But while we say you can layer it on, but you need time for the students to discuss and to learn how to invent a game, right? So that's why one of the slides that we mentioned, what's next, is to try out shorter event games experiences, 2 to 3 lessons, so that it'll be easier for teachers to at least try this approach. Yeah. So yeah, difficult is really for them to start, because I can understand the challenges they're facing as well, because they are really struggling with time. Yeah. And of course, to some of them, PE is about really movement. It's about lots of activities, and not about sitting down to discuss what is communication, why is it so important, and so on and so on. Yeah. So it's a different way of looking at PE. Yeah. That's why what Joy wrote as well. It really depends on your belief in PE, what PE is about. It's about the role of your teachers and how students learn. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Another question sort of from Farihan. In terms of inclusion teaching, how do you tackle with the hyper or the introvert students?
Yeah, thanks, Farihan. It's a really good question. Okay, to be very honest with you, I mean, there will be some students who do not like inventing games, right? Because to them, the mindset is, when I come for PE lesson, I want to play. Right? I don't want to think so much, right? Because it's been really stressful in class. I want to come here and just play, just run around. I don't want to discuss. I don't want to invent something. But majority of them, 90% to 95% of them, really, really like it, and they want it to try it again. But there are also students who are really, really quiet. And because the intent of inventing game is our focus is to allow them to work with students who are not their friends. So we mix it up randomly, right? So at the start, you do have them not talking to one another. Some are really quiet, and that's why you need to take time to build the environment. You need time to allow them to play games, to know each other, to talk to one another, to start to design something. You will still have students who are quiet, but if you read the literature on game design, usually those who are quiet tend to be the most vocal in inventing games, because the game is no longer dominated by those who are the most athletic, for example, right? The school player, for example. So my best student over the 2 to 3 schools that I've collaborated with are not the students in the sports team. They are the students in choir, in library, in clubs and societies. They are not very skillful, but they have a lot of creative ideas. And we've also found that those who are in the sports team are really limited by the game that they are playing. So they are not able to think out of the box, because to them it's like football. In the invasion game, it must be played like football, right? But for students who are not as skillful as them, they are creative. So they give a lot of suggestion. So actually, we find that the so-called introvert, in a normal PE lesson, tend to open up a lot more. In their reflection, they can write beautifully. They wrote things that are so insightful. But you still have the 1 or 2, but compared to a normal PE lesson, you will find the usually quiet students to be more vocal, and they contribute a lot more. So that is my experience.
Thank you for that. Another question: how do you teach teachers how to ask effective questions within the inventing games model?
Kanai, you have a lot of very difficult question. Yeah, okay. For this question, you have to tackle it from a few areas. One is the belief of the teacher in the first place, right? Do they believe that questioning is important? Well, generally, we all say, yeah, it's really important. Asking questions is important, but deep down inside, subconsciously, some of them may not believe so, because they believe that PE should not be asking so many questions. So for teachers who doesn't want to ask questions in the first place, is it limited by their skill or by their belief, right? So let's say, for example, okay, they believe that it's important and they buy into the importance of questioning. So how do we teach them to ask effective questions? Is to start, right? They have to start to try, right? And they have to have someone, or if not, have some way to record down the question that they ask, right? So that they can analyze back and reflect on the question they ask, how effective they are. Of course, certain frame and certain structures will help them. And in Joy's book, Playing Fair, you have a lot of samples to use to guide them in asking the question that will bring out the learning. The other one is question starter. Like, for example, allow the teacher to give them some samples to start a question. For example, what if this, then what? You know, would you consider? What are you wondering? You know, so if you have this question starter, I think it will be easier. And the other way is, rather than getting the teacher to ask the question, to teach the students to ask the question themselves, right? So that could be one way to get over the part where the teachers are not confident in asking the question. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And I've got one more question from Matthew. With empowerment, did you find you had to revisit behavior expectations to be able to get the most out of this type of delivery?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Matthew, for the question. Yeah, definitely, for sure. That's why earlier on we mentioned to take the time to build the environment, very critical. Because with empowerment, if the routines and expectations are not set up right, you'll be chaos, right? So they have to understand what this is about, and when when you are given the ownership of the learning, what is the expectation? So with empowerment, there comes also certain boundaries, what they can do and what they can't do as well, and that has to be spelled out right at the start, and they have to understand as well. So yes, routine is very important, and that's why some classes will take longer for you to set the environment compared to the others. So you know your students the best. So, you know, in Joy's 10 stages in her book as well, she also wrote that it really depends, you know. So sometimes one stage can go beyond 2 to 3 lessons. Sometimes one lesson will do. So it really depends. Yeah, but you're right. Expectation bound routines are critical at the start.
Thank you for that. Are there any sort of final questions or any other comments like to be made? Nope. So I would like to thank Teng for presenting today on the Inventing Games model. I would also like to thank all of you for your attendance today and being part of this 40th anniversary webinar series. You will be able to find the webinar recording and further details of our upcoming webinars on the link that I've put in the chat. We also have our upcoming conference. So if you would like to attend that or send in an abstract to present, you are more than happy to send through those. We look forward to seeing you at these events, and we'll thank you for your attendance today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Matthew has one question. Maybe, I can.
Yeah, go on then.
The last question. Yeah.
Got it in there,
yeah,
Matthew.
The most difficult, there are a few, Matthew. As I mentioned earlier on, is to get them to understand how to invent a game. Really, because as I mentioned earlier on, right, kids they don't play as much right now, and they don't know how to invent, how to create a game. So we have to give them a lot of ideas, you know, how to send, how to receive, how to change the boundaries, the number of players, and that took us 2 to 3 lessons for that. And the other thing is really to get them to understand, to resolve the conflict, really. While ideally we want them to resolve the conflict themselves, but you know, it takes a lot of scaffolding, right? Really, and I think that is where the beauty of inventing game is, because in the process of inventing games over the 4 or 5 lessons, right, there will be opportunity where they disagree. There will be, for sure, right? So they have many opportunities, and that is where the skillfulness of the teachers comes in, right? Observant. Our antennas are really up, because we have to really scan the room, to go into a group, you know, stand at a distance to listen to them, to observe their body language, you know. Knowing when to come in is something that it takes a lot of practice, right? Because we want them to really solve it themselves, want them to argue, and hopefully, you know, they learn why is it so important to listen, asking the right question, and so on. So there are many issues, but the more you do it, the easier you'll find, because you are now experienced. So the advice is just start. You know, if you do not have the opportunity to have an 8 lesson to 10 lesson unit, just start with 3 lessons. Give them a game and ask them to modify the game that you show them or they play. That's all. You know, from there you add on a little bit of the values aspect. You know, importance of the 21cc, for example, talk about communication. Give them a little exit slip to discuss. How is this relevant to your everyday life? Why is it so important to be respectful, to be inclusive in life? Have you encountered anything that you feel that you are not included? How do you feel? So the feeling question is also very important, because we want to evoke the emotion. Yeah. So we find it challenging, but we were excited as well, because we are learning, because this is an area that we have not dabbled into, but right now with 2 to 3 experience, we felt really confident right now, and we hope to learn from you guys out there who have been trying out game design as well. Yeah, so that is my answer to your question, Matthew.
Thank you for that. I'll put all the details and everything onto our website, and I'm just going to stop recording.